All right. Hello, everyone. Kyle, AA0Z here. Welcome to the channel. It's Tuesday night. I usually don't stream on Tuesday night, but I've got the opportunity to interview Carlos. I want to introduce Carlos, KD9OLN. Hello, Carlos. How are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Good. Glad that you are available, and we set this up a couple of weeks ago, and we are going to interview Carlos doing Parachute Mobile, and this is not going to be your normal interview. We are going to get into the minutia of if you were jumping out of the plane with Carlos. He has got a YouTube channel that he's going to plug and tell us all about, and he's got a couple of videos that talk about the things that he does to get ready, his pack, all of the things that he brings along whenever he jumps out of the plane. And you can go watch that. You should go subscribe to Carlos's channel and watch all those videos and then come back and rewatch this interview because we're going to talk about jumping out of the plane and what it takes to jump out of that plane and make QSOs. So welcome, Carlos. Tell us about your YouTube channel and anything you want to plug here at the beginning of the show.
Well, I'm KD9OLN, Carlos. The YouTube channel is mainly geared around me doing something a little crazy, apparently, and that's jumping out of a perfectly good airplane while playing radio. I'm playing radio after I jump out, obviously, not, in the plane. Although the pilot has given me permission to transmit inside of the plane if I want to.
That's a question. We're going to get into that. So
okay.
Yeah.
So that's the basis of the channel. In terms of anything else social media wise, I have Twitter and I want to say, let me check here.
And it's all life at terminal velocity, right?
Just about. So, for example, with something like Twitter, in order to save the extra characters back in the day, because this was back in 2012 when they limited you very much, is life at TV, right? And then Instagram is life at terminal velocity, and KD9OLN.com takes you to my YouTube channel. And I think that's about it. I don't know. Maybe if I remember something else, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Just stick it in the chat, or and I will. Thank you, Smoking Ape. He put your YouTube channel in the chat, so everyone go over and open a new tab and subscribe to Carlos's channel. So you did a parachute, what's in my pack, and that is out of all of the jumps and the experience that you have gotten, those are the things that you take up into the plane, right? So people can go over and take a look at those things and ask you questions and leave comments. But that is your current setup today?
That is my current setup of sorts. I don't remember exactly what I put there because I haven't seen that video in like a month. But it's short of the antenna, everything else is static. The antenna is the only thing that I vary from jump to jump because I like to experiment.
Yeah.
Right now, my go-to antenna for this is the Pac-Tenna end-fed half-wave mini.
Right.
Because it fits really well in that pack, and everything else that I've tried doesn't quite fit so nicely.
Right.
They still work well, but that one just fits just perfectly in that pack.
Right. Gotcha. Thanks, Ham Radio Dude, for the $2. Appreciate it. Thank you for supporting the channel. No, we don't have to do that. If you want to dance, you can dance, but Dan says, I want to see Carlos do a TikTok midair.
I don't even have a TikTok account, so there you go.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, so what got you, just real quick, what got you into amateur radio? And can you give us like a quick synopsis on your story on your ham radio career?
So broad strokes, I got my tech ticket December of 19, upgraded to general in January of 20. It was a long time coming. One of my uncles was a ham. He was teaching me the stuff from me being a kid all the way until I left the island. I'm from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I always wanted to do it and get it. And that way I could talk to him on the radio and whatnot. But then I, became a teenager and saw the price of things, and I went, not happening.
Right. Right.
Fast forward to 2017, Hurricane Maria hits Puerto Rico pretty hard,
Uh,
and I have no way of communicating with anyone on the island because cell phone networks are down, power's down, this, that, the other, and of course the amateurs are still in the air.
and you're here in St. or you're here in Indiana at that point, right?
Exactly. I moved to the United States in 19. Oh my God, it's been a lot of years.
Yeah.
It was in the early. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I still go home and I still keep track of my my family and whatnot.
Right.
And yeah, I'm living in Indiana, and Hurricane Maria happens, and like that was the real. It's like I really need to get this done, and then I saw the prices of things, and I went, maybe I can wait. Friend of mine put me clued me into Baofeng's.
Yeah.
I was like, and then he gave me one, and I was like, well, now I don't have an excuse.
The gateway drug.
So, exactly. Baofeng's are the gateway drug of ham radio. So I got my ticket. As a matter of fact, the funny part is that same friend that gave me that radio still doesn't have his ticket.
How did he? I don't know. Do I want to know how he got?
He's a prepper, and he was like, we got to have these. And
gotcha.
I'm like, okay, well, it's like a gun. It's no good if you don't practice.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So at what? All right. So we're going to, again, talk about actually jumping out of the plane and what it takes to do parachute mobile. But at what moment after you got, let me rephrase this. Did you think about doing parachute mobile before you got your ticket or after you got your ticket?
After.
Okay.
So the idea came about from trying to figure out ranges on the ground, right? How far can I go with this HT on the ground? Okay, I can talk to a repeater 20 miles away. I cannot talk to a repeater 22 miles away. All right, so I have some bases there. How far can I stretch it if I make my antenna higher and higher? So, I got on the roof of my house. Okay, that works.
Yep.
I can hit farther. And then my brain went, well, dummy, you have the ability to get to 14,000 feet. Why don't you do that and see how far you can go with that in 5 watts?
What was the moment that was a reality? Like, do you remember where you came up with that and said, I can jump out of this plane and do radio stuff?
It was sometime in the winter of 2020. Winter is the downtime for me as a skydiver. I'm in the Midwest. We don't skydive from about the end of October, beginning of November through mid-April or so because of cold weather. I would personally go, but the problem is the plane needs a minimum number of skydivers to go. And we can't find enough people stupid enough to go in this cold. I'm stupid enough to go in the cold.
Gotcha.
So anyhow, I'm thinking about what, my goals for the year and whatnot. And, I'm mixing skydiving and I have this radio here. And my brain went, wait a minute, hang on. You've been trying to see how far you can go. Just go.
Yeah.
Nothing's keeping you, nothing keeps you from leaving the airplane and opening the parachute at 14,000 feet and seeing how far you can go with an HT.
It was an aha moment? Or was it I think I can do this?
Oh, it was I'm going to do this. It wasn't even, I think I can do this. It was, I'm going to do this. And then, I don't know, but about a month later, Bob, oh my God, what is Bob's call sign?
K6UDA?
Yeah, K6UDA. Did a video of him being in a plane with a 2 meter, HT. And I'm like, oh, that son of a gun beat me to it. But, he was cruising at like 3,000 feet. And I'm like, I know I can get farther from 14. I know I can. I mean, 14,000 feet. Why couldn't I?
Right.
So I sent them a message saying, hey, man, you beat me to that one, but I'll have a video for you in a month or two. Sure enough, when the season started and I went ahead and did the jump, I posted it. I put it on YouTube so I could send it to Bob. And then just out of giggles, I said, the handful of people, I think it was like 8 people made contact with, may want to see this. So I posted a link to that on Reddit Amateur Radio.
Yep. I saw that post.
And I woke up the next morning with like 400 views, and I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a minute.
Right.
There's something to this. So here I
And
am.
and that was on 2 meter, right? You
Yeah, that was
started
on 2
out on
meters.
2 meter. Yeah, yeah.
So it was
yeah.
one of those, well, okay, if people want to watch this, I guess. I mean, I want to do this to some extent. I mean, I don't want to spend my entire day doing this generally,
Right.
but I will if there's enough demand for it.
Whenever you realized that this could be a thing and you made your first jump, was there a process that you went through in your mind to say, is this feasible? What are the safety ramifications? What happens if that? Like, what was the thought process of making this a reality, but also making it safe?
So safety is my number one concern. I have plans for tonight, and they don't include being in the hospital or in a morgue.
Right.
What I tell any of my students is what I tell anyone who asks me questions relating to safety and skydiving. I can mitigate a lot myself, right? I keep my gear in check. I keep everything just
Pristine.
perfectly aligned, right? So yeah, absolutely. That was once I had my mindset that I'm going to do this, I started going through the process of how do I do this safely?
Yes.
So
Right.
sure enough, like, look, the radio has a lanyard hole. I'm going to put a lanyard on it. How am I going to fix that? Well, I need to fix it in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the parachute system. So I fix it to myself on a belt. So there is a carabiner attached to my belt, and the belt's obviously cinched around me. And now this thing is the lanyard is through the carabiner with a lock on it. Some carabiners have locks, some don't. I spent the extra $2 for the one with the lock. That way I know it's not going to come unlatched and oops.
Yep.
A couple of reasons. One, I don't want to drop that thing on somebody's skull.
Right.
I can't live with that.
Yep.
Like my conscience wouldn't let me live with that. And two, it's an expensive piece of gear, man. I don't want to lose $350. But really, it was primarily I can't drop this on someone. It would either kill them or hurt them severely.
Right.
And I don't want that. I can't have that on my conscience. So the 2 meter HT or it's multi-mode HT was an easy fix
for your first one to see if
exactly. So, of course, you do this with a whip antenna. I'm like, well, a whip antenna can go that far.
Yeah.
How far can I go with something with a little bit of gain, like a J-pole?
Right.
So I ordered a J-pole. Let's do this with a J-pole. Well, how do I do this safely with a J-pole?
Well, so how long was the J-pole?
It's a 2 meter J-pole.
So it's 19 and a half inches or so?
Maybe longer. I don't know.
Okay.
It's close. What if it's for 2 meters and the J-pole is a meter long?
Yep. Okay.
To 3 feet.
Yep. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Yep.
I was thinking about a Slim Jim. There's a guy on eBay. One of the local hams I talked to, he got his ticket about the same time as I did. He's like, "Hey man, I bought this thing," and my brain, I got to talk to Zach and find out what he bought from whom, because that's the next step.
Yep.
So sure enough, I bought one of those Slim Jims, and there's another guy that sells Slim Jims online that happens to be in Indiana. Bought one from him as well. Just okay. How well do they compare to each other? It was all a let's play radio from 14,000 feet and see what the differences are between these antennas, because I can control the radio, right? It's always 5 watts. It's always the same radio. I know where the performance. I know that there's a steady thing there, and then the only thing I'm changing is the antenna. So let's see what plays better than the other, right? So far, I can tell you that a J-pole or Slim Jim, the wider twin lead plays better than the narrower twin lead does, and that there's a very distinct effect to me making a turn and it changing the pattern of radiation. Well, I shouldn't say changing the pattern of radiation, the pattern of coverage. So typically streaming behind me, and it's warming the ground and it's warming a cloud, and is using the ionosphere to bounce back down to some extent. I mean, it's 2 meters, so
Right.
ain't much that it can do, but there's some there, right?
We were talking earlier, you are literally a human satellite tumbling in air with the polarization of that 2 meter signal just going everywhere, right? To a certain extent, right?
It's not exactly tumbling, but it is definitely changing in
It's changing in direction, doing one of these
direction
things,
as
right?
I make turns in the sky to stay with the wind line, right?
So is that whenever you have that, it's attached to the obviously the top of the HT, right?
Yep.
Is it coming up over your shoulder?
No, it's going down between my legs and behind me.
Gotcha. Okay.
So again, safety considerations. I don't want anything anywhere near the lines of the parachute, because if an antenna gets caught up in there, then I'm out of luck.
That was one of my major questions is that I was going to ask you about your HF antenna is where is that antenna? How is that trailing behind you, you know?
So with the Slim Jim, I put, let me see, do I have some here? Yeah, I do. All right. So I'm a hunter. I don't know if you're a hunter. Are you familiar with hunting decoys?
Yes.
All right. So decoys for hunting, if you're not familiar, don't just stay in the water because they want to stay in the water. They are made out of plastic for the most part, and they have a keel on them that has a little bit of weight, but they can float away. So they make decoy weights. This is a bar of lead that weighs, I want to say, 4 ounces.
Okay.
Right. I don't know if the green screen is not showing it very well.
It's there you go.
Right. So I can take a couple of these and tie them to the bottom of the Slim Jim with a little bit of ribbon, right? Or a little bit of string or whatever.
Yep.
And now the Slim Jim is weighted in such a way that it trails behind me on a slope. I thought that one trailed it behind me, not quite 45, but then again, not quite vertical. And I thought, well, 2 will definitely put it vertical. No, it still streams at about a 45-degree angle. There's enough. The wind is acting on it enough on the antenna that it just pulls it back.
Right. How fast are you going whenever you're floating down after you have deployed your parachute?
So my parachute flies at about 25 miles an hour on a horizontal speed.
Okay.
So airspeed is about 25 miles an hour. Excuse me. My ground speed varies depending on the winds aloft. Gotcha. Right. So if I'm flying, if my 25 mile an hour parachute into a 10 mile an hour wind, I have a net effect of 15 miles an hour across the ground. But decoy weights,
right?
Of course, they're greens. The box is green, so it's not showing very well. But I did the same thing with. So earlier this year, I made a 20-meter Slim Jim for testing. It's a mess. It's a lot of wire to take up in this guy, but I had to test, right?
Right.
I had to test. So let me drop this real quick. Here we go. And I put a couple of those weights on it, and even then, it's mostly, it's not even 45 degrees. It is, I don't know, call it 30 degrees to me, if that, because there's the wind is acting on the wire enough that it's lifting the weight, the 8 ounces, like it's nothing.
Yeah, right. Gotcha. Very good. Okay, so we've covered the aha moment and the few couple of jumps that you did for 2 meters, and then you made the jump to HF, right?
Yes.
So at what point, take me through your process and your thinking of, well, I can do this on 2 meters. Why can't I do this on HF?
So HF got complicated.
Okay.
Why can't I do this on HF? One, I don't have a radio that I feel confident taking in the air. So I had to figure out, can I get a radio that I'm confident with taking in the air? Because I don't like my shack radio is a Kenwood TS440,
It's huge.
And it's a heavy piece of gear, and I don't want to take that.
Right.
So over winter, I bought an ICOM IC706 Mark II G for doing parks on the air because I enjoy going to the park and playing radio.
Yep.
And, it wasn't long after I got it, I went, this thing is small enough and light enough that I can probably take it with me. So radio sorted out, and now antenna.
Yep.
What can I take with me? And of course, I don't know if you've seen, I have a video about my Parks on the Air box.
I did. I watched that. Yep.
It's a dipole. It's a vertical dipole. Well, that's not going to work. I can't.
Right. You can't get a vertical or right.
You can't stream both wires the same direction and have it work right.
Right.
So I'm scratching my head trying to come up with an answer, and I decided, well, look into old school aviation, and there's this thing called the ZEP. Well, guess what? A ZEP is nothing more than a Slim Jim, or Slim Jim.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to build. I bought the gear, the wire and fittings I needed to make a Slim Jim for 40. And then when I saw the massive wire that it was, my brain said, let's start with 20.
Because I saw that in your video that everyone needs to go and watch, it is coiled up, and it is a large amount of wire that you are jumping out of the plane with.
Yes, which taught me something, right? I had, when I made that jump with that antenna, I thought to myself, I don't have to worry terribly about securing this antenna. I just have to worry about securing it a little bit. So I secured it with just the strap that keeps the pack closed. And when I left, as I was walking out, I didn't realize that one of the coils came undone and another one started to come undone. And when I left, now I have 6 feet of wire, and I'm like, you obviously can't see it in the video because the video's from my GoPro on my head, but I'm seeing this wire whip in my face, and I'm like, oh dear God, don't let this tangle up with my lines. Don't let this tangle up with my lines. Open up. Don't let this tangle up with my lines, because it's a scary moment. So of course I learned, managing all that wire matters a lot. You can't just do it with one connection. You have to do multiple connections in multiple places and whatnot. So, things you learn.
Right.
Thankfully, this time I learned it without having to experience a negative effect from it, but that could have ended up bad.
Yeah.
So now I have to put even more thought on what I take with me and how I take it. So anyhow, I built that Slim Jim radio antenna. Okay, no problem. Need to power this thing. So figured out I needed a battery, picked up a bioenno. It works great. But my HT has a feature that makes the HT jumps relatively easy, and that is it has a recorder built in.
Yep.
So now my brain's going, is the GoPro going to have enough microphone to pick up the QSO?
Right.
Maybe not.
Save that thought, because we're gonna get to that. Yeah. So you tried the Slim Jim, had some issues, got coiled up, whatnot. So from what I understand, you migrated to something else that is your current configuration, right?
Yes. So something that I had ordered but hadn't received yet. It happened to have gotten into my mailbox that same weekend I was making that jump. Was NFET halfway from Pactena. And let me tell you, the size difference is drastic.
I bet
The manageability of it is just a world of difference, right? Because that entire antenna fits in a little pouch inside of the pack that I'm taking.
So has it rethought the pack that you take?
No.
The
pack that I take, I bought with the intent of fit the battery, fit the radio, have an extra pocket or two for incidentals that you're not thinking about right now. And that's what I did. I bought a pack that will fit it. And it turns out that I have found the use for every stupid pocket in that pack, and it works great for what I'm doing.
Gotcha.
There's a saying that you will grow your load to fit whatever pack you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And sure enough, I have grown my load to fit the pack I have. If I get a bigger pack, I'm going to carry more crap.
Right.
If I get a smaller pack, I'm going to carry less crap. Ultimately, I'm going to carry whatever fits in the pack.
Right. Right. So, all right. So you've migrated to the Pack 10. We've talked about your radio, your battery, all of the things you take up with you. So let's put everyone in the plane with you, okay? And well, first let's talk about on the ground. What do you do to get ready for this type of jump? You don't have to go through the procedure, but is there anything special to ham radio that you need to do to get ready for the jump? And one of the questions I'm also going to ask you is, you've got a whole support team here across America that is helping you with this jump. What is the coordination on the ground before you get into that plane?
So there's some background there, and that is that temporarily offline, Steve took Leah, his daughter, to space camp, and on their way up back to Wisconsin, they stopped at my house, and we had a long talk about this because I told them, I'm going to do this.
Yep.
And that's where the whole ground support team started. So we have a channel on Toad's Discord to go about it, but there was a very long conversation with Tio about how do we do this? Like the safety aspect of it is for me to figure out.
Right. Yep.
The ground support aspect of it, I had no clue. So we talked. I made a private channel on the Toad's Discord initially, invited a few people into it, started working through ideas to the point where it got to where we're at now. And then, it's going to keep evolving. It's just simply going to keep evolving.
Right.
But that ground support group comes out of the fine folks on Toad's Discord. Without their help, this wouldn't be as successful as it is, because I would still go up and make a jump and announce it here, there, and everywhere. Right.
Right.
But it's the folks that are on the ground that are making the recording of the secondary recording of the audio, which has come in handy a couple of times. The folks that are clearing the frequency. Oh my God.
So
in a million years, I wouldn't have thought that clearing the frequency an hour or two ahead of time would have made such a difference, and it does.
Right. So for those who don't know, before you make a jump, there's a group of people that get on a frequency, and that frequency. Let me ask you this question: it's known before you get on that plane?
It has to be, because I have no way of knowing what the frequency is after I get on the plane. So what happens, the process right now is I make an announcement. I'm going to go skydive, parachute mobile on X date, X time. Recently, it's been I make an announcement a couple hours ahead of time because I work in skydiving. It isn't very easy for me to take the time off work to make a radio jump. So if I know that I can sneak a jump in, I go ahead and make the announcement of, hey, I'm going to go do this in X number of minutes, be it 30, be it 90 or 120, whatever it is.
Right.
And then we start, if I have enough, if there's enough lead time there, I can say it's going to be this band. And based on that, we can go on web SDRs and start searching for an open frequency across the continental United States, Canada.
Right. Because whenever you start broadcasting, if it's not clear across America, you're going to know because you're at 14,000 feet, right?
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, that's a problem that I ran into with 2 meter, and that I was using the national call frequency 146.520. guess what? It's dead as doornails on the ground. But the moment you clear about 3,000 feet, it is chatter central. And there are people having rag chews on 14652.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, well.
Yeah. What do you do?
Wait for a break. Oh, wait, but
Right.
KD9OLN, just
Right.
just break in because there's no gap there.
Right.
So you having someone on the ground or a group of people on the ground keeping that frequency, first of all, helping me select the frequency, and then secondarily keeping that frequency clear matters a whole lot.
Right. So all right. So you know the frequency that's on, or that you're going to be on, and obviously what band, right? And then, so you're getting in the plane, and you are what like just high level. What mental checks are you doing from a ham radio perspective whenever you're in the plane? Because you've got a whole mental thing going on with safety and all the things that you do on the ground before you step in that plane. I'm sure that you could write a novel about that, and it's probably like you said, safety is the number one priority. What are some of the things that you're doing ham radio related before you get on that plane? Is there any mental checks that you're doing?
So ham radio related, once we know the frequency, and I have all my gear checked out, right? So let's assume that I've done all the safety checks for my skydiving gear, and I've done all the safety checks for my ham radio gear, because there is some component to that, right?
Right.
I make sure the radio turns on. I make sure that the battery is sufficient. I make sure that the radio's on the right frequency and locked. And not just locked on the radio, but also locked on the microphone, because my radio has two places where you can lock, and both places can change it, even though one may be unlocked. Well, like, let's say my radio is locked, but my microphone is not. I can change the frequency on the microphone without knowing it.
Yep. Gotcha.
And then I make sure, like, as we're climbing into, to altitude, I don't have a whole lot of room to, check on things. But as soon as I have room, I open up my pack again, and I make sure that the radio can turn on. It's still in the right frequency, that my recorder is ready, that I can just hit the record button on it.
Right.
So
this is in the plane, right?
This is in the plane on the ride to altitude, right? So we're cruising through 8,000 feet, wherever we're going. I still have gear checks that I have to give myself for skydiving.
Yep.
Those come first, radio comes second.
Yep.
Those come again, the radio comes second.
Right.
I check my gear constantly, out of an overabundance of caution.
Yeah, well, you have to, right? I mean, that's part of the process, right?
So you give in skydiving, you're taught to give yourself 3 gear checks: one before you put the gear on, one after you have the gear on, and before you get on the airplane, and one before you get out of the airplane. My gear checking happens about 6 times all told. So I check it before I put it on. I check it after I put it on. I check it out before I get on the airplane. I check it after we're unbuckled. So you have to wear a seatbelt, believe it or not. In a skydiving airplane, you're required to wear a seatbelt.
Yep.
So after the seatbelts come off, people are moving around. I still give my gear. I check after that, because if there's an unlikely event of an emergency, I need to know that I'm good to go. And as people move in the airplane, if they're moving near me, I just gear check. So typically about 6 gear checks all told, before it's time to go. On the ham radio side, basically, I'm just making sure that my ham radio gear is properly operating, locked down, tied down, everything, and B, super secure, right? So the pack has 2 belts; those buckles are cinched in.
Yep.
I make sure that my hook knife is always handy. If, like, listen, worst case scenario, I need to eject this thing, I'm going to take a hook knife and I'm going to cut through that pack and just get rid of it.
Right.
Hopefully I'm over a field. I'm in Illinois, so there's a lot of corn and beans.
Right.
So, my hook knives have to be handy and available, and I need to make sure that everything is within reach. Other than that, my concern is make sure you have a good spot when you leave, clear the tail of the airplane, deploy the parachute.
Yep. Okay, so you're out of the plane. Okay. You're free falling. How long do you free fall?
Very short amount. I free fall anywhere between 3 and 10 seconds, depending on how I'm feeling.
Okay.
Right?
Pull the. Yep. Go ahead.
I really love free fall, but at the same time, I'm doing this to play radio.
Right.
So typically I'll watch the plane fly away. And as soon as I see I'm usually the last person out. So the plane gives me about 2 seconds before they just nose down.
Ah, gotcha.
The pilot has to turn around and pick up another load of skydivers.
Right. Gotcha.
So he's on a clock.
So you're out of the. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm out of the plane. Airplane starts to nose down. I'll deploy. Check my gear again. It said, is my parachute okay? Number one, right?
Right.
If my parachute's okay, I'm not playing radio, period.
Right.
So is my parachute okay? And if it is okay, now I can go about the business of getting an antenna out, turning on the radio, and playing radio in the sky.
So
right?
the radio is down by your. It's by your like in front of you, right? On your belt. Okay.
So the radio pack, the pack that I have is meant to be slung over a shoulder or worn around the waist like a fanny pack. If anyone in England is listening to this, no, I'm not talking about that. So it sits just over my groin. Radio's below me, obviously, in that pack. Excuse me. And the antenna's on top right now. So my pack antenna sits right on top of the radio in a separate pouch. And it's okay. Now let's pay out this wire.
Right? All right. So you open the pack.
Yep.
And the first thing to come out is the antenna, right?
Yes.
And it's wound between it's got a the weave on it, right? The figure eight. So you weave it back and forth until like in front of you, or do you do that between your legs so it goes between your legs, or how do you do that?
So I start with it to my side, right? So my safe side is the left side.
Okay.
It is irrelevant in terms of skydiving because I've already deployed my pilot chute and my main parachute, but everything on a typical parachute system is set up for a right-handed person. So anything that can get in the way is always on the left.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Again, out of just habit, I typically pay it out on the left side. And then once I'm done unwinding it, then I drop it between my legs. So I just move the wire down and around to under my legs so it trails immediately behind me. Most of the time I put my foot, I keep the coax around my foot so that I can keep the radiation a little bit farther away from me.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I'm like, how far behind is that stuff radiating from?
So I have an 18-foot length of coax, and I keep it as low as possible with my foot.
Yep.
And then call it, I don't know, let's say I lose 2.5 feet from my hips down to my foot. The rest of that coax is behind me, and then the winder is obviously connected to that, and then the antenna's farther out. So I feel fairly confident that I'm not roasting myself with RF when I'm doing this.
And because it's got those dummy weights on it, it floats. It floats at about a 30-degree angle. You think?
When it has the weights. So I did one of the jumps without the weights just to see what would happen.
Yeah. What happened?
Almost perfectly horizontal.
Really?
Like there might be a degree of deflection there, but it's almost perfectly horizontal.
Wow.
Which makes for a horizontal polarization, right?
Right.
But it also means that if you're in a vertical and you're not far enough that you're picking up the reflection from the atmosphere, then you're definitely not going to hear me.
Right. So the antenna's out. So what's next in the pack? Turning the radio on?
Next is turning the radio on. And immediately after is getting my earbud in my ear so that I can hear the calls.
So it's not, so the audio that's coming that we're hearing is not being piped out to the universe. It is through, you're hearing it on a headphone through both ears or one ear?
Single ear.
Single ear.
The radio will only play on one channel, and it's on the right-hand side on the headphone jack.
Oh.
So I imagine I could get a
stereo
converter
adapter
to do both sides. Well, one side is good enough.
Gotcha. But you have a helmet on. Obviously, your ears are exposed.
In the helmet that I'm using for this, yes.
Gotcha.
So my typical skydiving helmet is a full face helmet. I don't have it with me because I didn't think about it, but
yeah,
I have essentially what amounts to a skateboarding helmet.
Yep.
That allows my ear to be open to the outside. So I just pop ear up, butt in.
Right.
And then, antennas out, radio's on. I should, at the very least should be hearing static.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So if I'm not hearing static, I got to do some troubleshooting.
Right. Right. I know that you had trouble in your last jump, or maybe that was 2 jumps ago. That things were a little sideways, but in a perfect jump, you've got your headphone in, the antenna's deployed, and you're using just a regular microphone, right?
Just a regular microphone, not even a dead kitty on it.
Yeah. So you pull that microphone out of the pack, and can you physically see the radio? Like if
absolutely.
You look down. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, absolutely. Abe is asking, when do I check the SWR on my first transmission?
Yeah.
So first.
Now, when do you get the soldering iron out and lengthen that antenna?
So I have a general idea that my antenna is okay because I've tested it on the ground before taking it up, right?
Right.
But it's still, I still need to make sure that I don't have something wrong with it. So first transmission, check SWR. Also, before the first transmission, and this one kind of took me for a loop. Floor, what do you call it? My S level, my signal level on noise, goose egg.
Yep. So you had an RF gain issue, right?
I wouldn't say an RF gain issue so much as I have zero interference at that height.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know where you were going with it. Yeah, you're right.
So my like at my house, I can key up my radio right now and just turn it on. It's an S7,
right?
Noise, right?
Right.
If I go to the park, I may get down to S3.
Yep.
I have it as 0 in the sky. Is amazing.
Right. Right. So at that point, you everything, your antenna's good. You've got your earbud in. You've got your mic in your hand. You're looking down at your radio. Everything looks good. And is there how do the people on the ground know that you're away? Is there any indication other than you calling CQ over top of them?
Just me calling CQ.
Okay. Got it.
So again, I've been lucky with the ground support team that has come out of the Toads Discord, in that they're holding the frequency and they're just taking breaks in there to wait. They have an idea of when I'm getting out, right? We have an airplane tracker. Commercial aircraft are required to broadcast ADS-B in the United States. So I can give you the tail number and you can keep track of the tail. And if you see that it's going from 14,000 down to 13,000, I'm already out.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Right? On a couple of jumps, Hammer to Nomad was at the drop zone, and he was just listening to the air frequency.
Yep.
So he would tell the group, "Hey, he's out," because the pilot's already diving. The pilot just said, "Skydiver's away. I'm diving."
Gotcha.
Right.
So, yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
So basically, I wait for a quick break in the conversation at KD9OLN, Kilo Delta Niner Oscar Lima November. Right. That pretty much leaves me the frequency.
Right. So after you call CQ, obviously there's a massive pileup, right? And getting through a pileup, obviously, you've got the way that you deal with a pileup, and I have my way that I deal with a pileup, and everyone has their own way that they deal with their pileup or a pileup. how do you record your QSOs? You were talking about a GoPro mic, and I saw one on your helmet, but I also saw a shot of like one maybe on your wrist also.
Yes. So I'm a tandem instructor, and one of the things that I have is a glove, a skeletonized glove, if you will, with a GoPro mount on it. So I have a camera on my helmet, and I have a camera on my hand glove that I've been using in the last couple of jumps. So you have it. It makes for a little bit better video to edit. I think you watching me fly through the sky on a single angle would be just fine. But then again, if I give you two angles, it may work out better for you.
It's more, yeah, it's more adventurous on two angles.
It's that POV thing. You have that POV from the helmet, and then you have the camera looking back at me. So the GoPro glove is for when I do a tandem. If we're going to do a tandem and you want to buy pictures and video, I take that with me and I put it in front of you, and you get to go, yeah,
right.
Nobody can hear you, but it's okay. We put music over that. Well, guess what? If I can use it for a tandem, I can use it for this.
Right. At what point do you start that recording? While you're in the plane?
Yes. So my helmet GoPro goes on when the green light turns on in the airplane. So there's about 2 minutes or so of gap in there that I get edit out.
Yep.
And then the camera GoPro goes on as I'm walking to the door.
Gotcha.
And
all of that audio is captured on either one of those two cameras or both of those cameras, and then you obviously edit that together.
So the audio in general, yes, but the audio of the radio, no. So I have a recorder that is on one of the side pockets on my pack that is connected to the radio and getting a direct feed from the radio.
When does that go on?
That goes on at about 10,000 feet. When I'm making my last gear check, so I typically have an audio file that is like, 6 minutes too long, and it's just a flat line because guess what? When the radio's off, actually, even I turned the radio on at that time too, but even then, when the antenna's not out, you're not even getting static on the radio.
Right. Gotcha. So at that point, you're making QSOs, and then the one thing that I think is really cool. Obviously, the whole thing is really cool, but you're announcing your altitude as you're coming down, and I think that is hilarious. I'm not hilarious, but I think that is a great aspect of Parachute Mobile. It just adds to the suspense of 7,500 feet. 6,000 feet, and it paints a picture as you're coming down and taking QSOs.
So again, as part of safety, I wear two altimeters, not one. I actually have three if you really want to get technical about it. I have two, one on each wrist that are visual, and then one that goes, in this case, in a pocket inside of the helmet because my ears are exposed, but that one is audible.
Yep.
So it makes certain tones at certain altitudes, so I know where I'm at. Checking my altitude. If you don't know your altitude, you're dead.
Yeah.
What I tell my students, right? You need to be altitude aware. So I practice what I preach. I check my altitude on a regular basis. It serves two purposes for me. One, I know where I'm at.
Yep.
I know how much ballpark time I have remaining playing radio before I have to call it done. That's number one. And number two, propagation changes, and the elevation I'm at changes that as well, right? So I have had an occasion where I'm at 10,000 feet and you can't hear me in St. Louis. But for some reason, at 6,000 feet, you hear me like I'm standing next to you.
Yep.
Right. So as you're hearing the altitude, okay, I know that I can work him from 8,000 down to 6,000, and then he drops off. Instead of trying to make that call when I'm out at 11,000 feet, hey man, how about you just wait? If you've heard me in the air before and you've heard when I'm making those calls,
yeah,
you know when my signal's better to you.
Right.
So you can gauge when you're going to make your attempt at making that QSO based on that.
Yeah. Red has got a question that ties right into this. So being so high in elevation, you probably don't use the ionosphere for propagation, probably line of sight on HF. Have you had any HF contacts that you're convinced use ionosphere propagation versus line of sight?
With certainty, no, but I can say with call it 80%. One of the jumps I made end of May,
Yeah.
there was a contact to Panama.
Yeah.
The math doesn't work out on line of sight to Panama.
Right. What band
Right,
were you
so
on?
20 meters.
20.
So
Right.
with the flip side of that is that the first time I talked to Chuck KK6USY,
Yep.
I thought I was using the ionosphere, and then I like that night after I landed and did some math, I'm like, no, I can hit California on a straight line of sight.
Wow.
This is interesting.
Right. Right.
Did I hit him on a line of sight, or did I hit him on an ionospheric bounce?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But
we'll never know, right? But I mean, that's the great thing about ham radio, right? Is it just works. You know, it doesn't matter if it's ground wave, it's bouncing off of clouds, it's bouncing off of a moon. Who knows? But you made the contact, right?
Exactly. So,
yeah.
You know, as long as it works.
Right. Right. All right. So you're making contacts. You're working through the pileup. People are being lids. They're calling all over the place. You know, it's just amazing. Whenever I turned on my radio, whenever you were doing it was live on Ham Radio Crash Course, and it was unbelievable. And kudos for you of getting through that pileup and hearing anybody. It was amazing.
It was wild.
It was, and you know,
I was not prepared for that.
And it's going to get worse.
Oh, I imagine.
But
I expected, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 people maybe. But when I listened to the audio of that jump, there's clearly over 100 stations on there.
Yeah.
Just because just everybody's like, oh, that's
right.
So many different voices at one time. And I'm like, it's got to be over 100.
Right. So you're making QSOs, and everyone, you know, can experience a pileup, and that's part of being a ham radio operator. Tell me about the landing. You know, at what point do you shut everything off, and how do you get prepared to land?
So on HF, in the VHF world, I cut it off at 3,000 feet.
Okay.
Reeling in my antenna, super easy. On HF, I have a lot more wire to deal with, so I'm cutting it off at about 4,000 feet. I made the mistake of not cutting it off on that night jump.
Yeah.
And I basically made the decision that I'm going to land with this antenna extended because I'm not dealing with the antenna at this point.
Right.
Just simply not doing it. There's no one behind me. I don't have to worry about knocking somebody upside the head with a weight. I'm not worried about it. But on HF, breaking it off at 4,000 feet. 4,000 feet gives me enough time to wind the wire back up. And basically, I'm checking traffic.
Are you just pulling it up and just like pushing it?
No, I'm actually winding it.
You're winding it. Okay.
Yeah, because it takes only a fraction more time. And it's a lot easier to land with it that way because, like the 20-meter J-pole or Slim Jim, man, I just coiled it. And it was a mess. And landing with that mess on me was difficult.
I bet so, yeah.
So when it came time to do the Pac-10, I was just like, you know what? It's going to take me maybe an extra 30 seconds. Let me wind this and then stow it away inside of the pack.
Gotcha.
I was done winding it and had it stowed back into the pack at 2,500 feet, which is fine by me, right? Anything below 2,000 feet, I would be like, I need to give myself more altitude, but 2,500 feet, just fine. If stow it away and land.
Gotcha. If you pull the parachute or the parachute right after you get out of the plane at 14,000 feet, how much time do you have to make contacts before you have to turn that radio off?
It depends on what parachute I'm flying. If I'm flying my parachute, so let's say, I'll explain this in a minute, but if I'm flying my parachute, I got about 7-8 minutes of working time.
Okay.
If I borrow a bigger parachute, it increases my playing time.
Okay.
The bigger the parachute in relation to the weight under it, the longer it floats, right?
Gotcha.
So we have a thing called the wing loading. The wing loading is the weight of the entire system versus the square footage of the parachute, right? So let's say, for the sake of round numbers, that I weigh 200 pounds leaving the door, right? I don't weigh 200 pounds, but I put on a 20-pound parachute system.
Yep.
I put on a helmet, radio, bag, blah, blah, blah. And guess what?
It adds up quick.
Right? Let's say I weigh 200 pounds leaving the airplane and I have a 200 square foot parachute. My wing loading is 1-to-1.
Okay.
On a 1-to-1 wing loading, I'm going to float for this long. On a 1.5-to-1 wing loading, I'm going to float for this long, right? It's a shorter amount because I have more weight under the same size parachute.
Yep.
So my parachute's 135 square feet, ballpark 8 minutes of working time before I have to just, I'm done. Right?
Gotcha.
If I'm borrowing a larger parachute, depends on the size of the parachute. If I use one of the Dropzone student systems that has a 300 square foot wing, I could easily be up there for 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah. Gotcha. So, you've made all your QSOs and you've reeled in your antenna and you put it back in your pack. Is there anything else before you land? Is it just a standard landing, or do you have to do anything special because you have this harness on you with equipment on it? Is there anything that you do that's different?
Nothing special in terms of having the radio with me, other than, the standard parachute landing. I take my parachute for another double check of controls. Can I turn right? Yes. Can I turn left? Yes. Can I flare? Yes. I'm good to go.
Gotcha.
Right? I practice a flare a couple more times if I have time, because I have added weight. Yeah. And my typical skydive doesn't have that added weight, so I'm used to the flare being without it.
Gotcha.
But it's nothing out of the norm in terms of the process, right? I'm a tandem instructor. My wing loading changes with every single jump. So I'm used to varying wing loadings. I'm used to the parachute flying different with every landing.
Gotcha. I got some more questions here, mostly from the chat, and we got 3 or 4 minutes before the next Ham Radio Clubhouse. Ape asked this: what do the people at the skydiving place think about this?
There are a couple that are licensed hams that are wondering why they didn't do it before I did it. So they think I'm a little crazy, but they understand.
Yep.
There are a couple that are very technically adept and understand what I'm doing, and that think it's the bee's knees and think it's cool. Right. And they're in the rest of the crowd. It's like, he's doing that again. What is wrong with him? Who's he talking to? Doesn't he know he's supposed to free fall? So
yeah. So you kind of, it's kind of all over the board, right?
Yeah, it depends on who had the drop zone, right? So the people that are super technical think it's cool. The people that are hams are wondering why they haven't done it.
Yep.
And then the rest of them, there's a mixed bag there that just kind of goes, oh, that's pretty neat. How far did you talk this time? Or
yeah,
boy, you're one big nerd. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Pays the bills. My nerdiness pays my bills. I'm happy with it.
Right. I think this was a question from Ham Radio Dude. Will you try HF contacts with a dummy load while parachute mobile?
I have, right? The dummy load is the guy flying the parachute.
The next question here, if I can, Dan says, I wonder if there's some type of throat mic or headphone that the military uses that can be built into the helmet. I'm assuming they use comms when parachuting.
They do. There is. I haven't bought it.
Yeah.
Because what I have is working. If I had some wind noise like I did with my HT, so I ended up buying a headset for my HT that has a boom and a dead kitty on it. To make it work, because the HT was picking up way too much wind noise. If it were an issue with the HF rig, I'd definitely do it, but it's not an issue, so I'm not. Just leaving it alone.
Gotcha. Let's see. Yeah, thanks, Ham Radio Dude. $5. I was getting to your question just here in a bit. Would it be possible to have a ground crew pointing a directional Wi-Fi antenna to your GoPro to restream the footage live from the ground? Holy Holy.
So technically that is yes. We haven't made it work yet. I've actually tried that with regular skydiving, and the Doppler effect is kicking me in the butt. So I haven't been able to make up for the Doppler effect of the signal. Sooner or later, someone's going to figure it out. I know I haven't.
Gotcha. All right. It's 7 o'clock. We've been at this for an hour. Carlos, anything you want to say? Thank you very much for being here. I learned a ton. This was awesome. Anything you want to say for parting words?
Come skydive with me. And if not with me, go skydive somewhere. Have fun. It's an amazing experience, whether you're doing radio or not. I know people think it's crazy, but it is an amazing experience. It'll change your life.
I've never been skydiving before, but I hear that. Yes, I hear that. It is an amazing thing to experience.
Going to the Huntsville Ham Fest. If you want to skydive with me on Friday, we can do parachute mobile.
There you go. Anybody going to the Ham Fest, hook up with Carlos. Give him a shout on Discord. Go over to his YouTube page and subscribe. Go watch his videos. This is the coolest thing that I have seen in ham radio in a long time. So I
appreciate it.
I hope that he keeps doing it. This is why I wanted to interview him, because I'm fascinated with it. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate you being here and taking the time. And thank you.
You're welcome.
73, everyone.
73.